it really wasn't until about 2019 that I got military family back in my life. I was one of the original founding members of the Nebraska Warriors hockey program. We use hockey as a way to help with PTSD, anxieties, depression, all the things that the military can have, especially post-war military. And I saw a huge need for it. I saw a huge need for the local nonprofits that really can hit home with the individual veterans where, a lot of the big ones, they catch one here or there, but a lot of times they don't hit that full circle within the community the way the small nonprofits can, the mom and pops, the grassroots.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Jason Steiner, who served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1996 to 2000, served as an amphibious assault vehicle driver and also the battalion marksmanship instructor. And he is also the president and founder of Herostock, which we will get into in a little bit so you can learn more about what that is. But Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Rachel, thanks for having me.
That is my pleasure. Before we get into your story on the episode, I just wanted to kind of set a little bit of the mood for how we're going into this episode today. And I just want to ask you if you could describe how you are feeling today going into this in one word or a few words. How would you describe that?
Today, I'm feeling great.
Awesome.
It's been a great day.
Awesome. Is the sun shining where you're at?
It is. We had a little bit of a rainstorm today, and now the sun's back out. So
awesome. Awesome. That always helps so much. I'm in Washington State, so we take the sunny days not for granted.
I was going to say the 3 that you get a year.
Yeah. We've had like almost nonstop gloom the last couple of days with like little blips of sunshine, and today happens to be a sunny day. So I love them. Awesome. They really help. But I'm going to pass it off to you to share your story. And then if you wanted to share a little bit about what Herostock is somewhere in your story too, for the people who are wondering what the heck is Herostock,
sure.
Stage is yours.
Awesome. So I served 96 to 2000. I was amphibious assault vehicle driver, did that for 2 years. The last 2 years, I was a marksmanship instructor for our battalion. So I trained 1,100 Marines and corpsmen a year on rifle and pistol. I ended up getting out in 2000. Came back to Nebraska as a temporary move. 24 years later, we're still here. But came back here. I started a business January of 2001. I've run a flooring company for 24 years now. Had a family. When I first got back, we had my son. Me and my wife met in the military. We're still married today. And, 24 years later, 26 years later. So that's kind of unheard of, but
right.
5 years later, we had my daughter. I pushed away from a lot of military stuff when I first got back. I had kind of an incident at one of the larger nonprofits for veterans, and it really kind of turned me sour to it. So I didn't really have a whole lot of military in my life from 2000 to 2019. Obviously 9/11 happens. I struggled with, do I go back in? Do I stay home, raise my family, run my business that I'm running, or, do I pack up and head back over with the boys and do what we're supposed to do? So, I struggled really hard with that. That was probably one of the hardest things that I had to deal with was, that guilt of, do I jump back in? Or, is my 4 years the time that I was supposed to serve, and I'm on to things that I'm supposed to be doing now. And so I went through, a couple of years of that, of, watching my buddies go tour after tour after tour, and feeling like I should be there with them. But at the time I had young kids and a young business, and so I chose to do that instead. And it really wasn't until about 2019 that I got military family back in my life. I was one of the original founding members of the Nebraska Warriors hockey program. We use hockey as a way to help with PTSD, anxieties, depression, all the things that the military can have, especially post-war military. And I saw a huge need for it. I saw a huge need for the local nonprofits that really can hit home with the individual veterans, where a lot of the big ones, they catch one here or there, but a lot of times they don't hit that full circle within the community the way the small nonprofits can, the mom and pops, the grassroots. So I served on the board of the Nebraska Warriors for 4 years, from 2019 to 2023. I resigned January 1st of 2023. Within there, I actually had a night planned for our group. This is originally what it was just our group to go out and hang out together, not be in a spotlight, not be at a tournament, not be, in a function for Nebraska Warriors. It was just a night to hang out. I wanted to plan this for our group, and it ended up, I have a Marine that's a neighbor. He came down and he goes, "Hey man, I got a band that wants to come in and play. Do you want to put something around that?" Because my original thought was doing axe throwing. And I'm like, alcohol, axes, and veterans. We're probably going to end up at the ER a couple times. You never know what's going to happen. But he came down and he goes, "Hey man, I got this band that wants to come in and play. Would you be interested in doing something around this?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Get this guy to come in, throw out some fire pits, roast some dogs, make some s'mores, just kind of hang out and have a night." Well, I booked the band. 2 nights later, he comes down and he goes, "Hey, I've got another band that wants to come in and play now. Do you want to do something with them?" And I was like, "Well, let's make something of this." So we ended up naming it Vet Stock. Was the original that we did. I had 45 days from the day of the idea to the day of the event, and I grabbed a couple people. We put it together. We had about 100 people that showed up to it, and it was just a really cool evening. And a lot of the family and camaraderie that we had within the military, you could see that night. And it was healing through the music. We were throwing bags. We had a cornhole tournament going on. There was 60, 70 different raffle prizes that we gave away for free. It cost the people that showed up, it cost them $0 to attend. And having that family again, and that feeling of, it was described to me as, this was like a family reunion with your family that you really like that was there. That was the way it was described to me. And I kind of had that same feeling, that it was that real, everybody understood everybody. Nobody got into super deep conversations and that kind of stuff, but everybody just kind of understood. And we created a space where we could highlight nonprofits that were there. We created a space where people could talk. They could, be in competition, throwing the cornhole bags. And we had the music going, and music heals. Music's a huge therapy for a lot of people. After the event, well, during the event, even, we had people going, "Man, you have to do this again next year." And I was like, "No, it's a one night, one off. I'm not a promoter. I'm not a concert guy. I love going to them, but I don't want to set them up." And as it kind of continued, and 3 to 5 days afterwards, I had people texting, email, calling, "Hey man, what are you going to do next year? That was so much fun. We've got to do that again." And so I grabbed a couple of the people that helped me set it up, and I said, "Do we do something with this?" And they were like, "Yeah, let's do something with this." And that's how Herostock was born. We chose to move away from the name of Vet Stock because there's another Vet Stock on the East Coast that does similar stuff to what we do. So when we changed the name to Herostock, we actually added first responders and Gold Star families into it too. Our first responders, they see, they're on the battlefield every day, running into a burning building or getting shot at, or, dealing with people on their worst day. So it was easy to incorporate them. And obviously the Gold Star families, they gave, one of their loved ones gave the ultimate sacrifice, to keep us free. So again, it was very easy to integrate them into what we were doing. And then last year's event, we had about 9 months to plan it. We ended up putting 6 bands on stage. There was a cornhole tournament came back again with prizes. We had 2 food trucks. We had jumpers that came in and jumped in the American flag and the Gold Star family flag. The color line, the color line was showed up and they did, presented the colors and then took them down at the end. So we had a lot of cool stuff that happened that night, and again, people were, hey, you've got to keep doing this. This is just way too cool. We now have just hit 27 different states that's invited us to come do it at their state.
Wow.
It's grown that fast, and people see the need for it, and they, with the music piece of it, we try to get veteran or first responder singers or bands, which this year I think every singer that we have this year is a veteran. We just started getting some of the first responder singers that have started showing up and saying, hey, we want to play this too. So next year we'll see some of those guys and gals integrated into what we're doing. But yeah, it's grown super fast, and it creates a really cool space for people that understand each other.
I love
That's
that.
that's really what it's all about. So
Wow. Have you been to Washington?
we have not yet. We
Mm.
haven't even been invited to Washington yet.
Well,
So
take this as your invite.
28 states, there we are.
Yeah. No, that you've already got wheels turning in my head. That would be incredible. It's so cool hearing first of all, something that came out of the Midwest, because I'm from Iowa.
Yep.
So when we talk about veterans in the Midwest, there's not really that connect like there is with other states where there's like these huge military bases. I know Nebraska is different than Iowa. Obviously, there's more there, but it just where I grew up and where I came from, veterans existed in our community, but it wasn't like the community that I'm in now, which is a very military heavy community. And so it's really cool to see something like that coming out of the Midwest, but to grow something like that to the scale that it's grown to is incredible, because there is so much healing power in music that I don't even think a lot of the DoD itself has even really tapped into. I wish they would. I did have a question, and I don't know if you want to dive into this at all, but I'm
Sure.
curious what it was that happened at that first veteran organization, if you can share more, and without, obviously giving names or any like
Sure.
crazy details, but I am curious.
It was one of the national organizations. I went into one of their clubs, and I was greeted with, "Where did you serve? What war did you serve in?" And I said, "I didn't." And he goes, "Then why are you even here?"
Wow.
And I went, "Okay, that's enough of that." And I turned around and walked
Yeah.
out. And I was already dealing with the separation from the military at that point, and kind of reaching out for that military family that we had,
Yeah.
and then to get basically punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
The first event that I went to with any sort of a nonprofit, I was like, yeah, I don't really need this,
Right.
and stepped out of it. And I mean, most people didn't even know that I was a Marine unless somebody told them.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about it. I didn't, nothing. Like that was part of my life, and it was over, and I've moved on. And, now I have the Marine Corps plates on my truck and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just, I really wanted nothing to do with it after that.
Yeah.
And if that's the way they treat everybody, I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you go ahead.
that was my first experience with any national organization. So
Yeah. I think you served in kind of a unique, I mean, I think what most people these days would consider a bit of a unique time period, because most people think of like military, Marine Corps, they think of that 9/11, 2001 and forward, or they think of a specific like Gulf War, Vietnam War, or some kind of associated war. And so, when I say unique, I mean, it was mostly, I'm assuming, a peacetime, or
yep,
you weren't deploying out to anywhere where there was
right,
combat. And I can imagine that at that time, because even now, the conversation about transition and reintegration of service members post service is still, it's just now coming to the forefront of conversation. And back then, I can imagine that that really wasn't much of a conversation with transitioning you out of the military.
No, we got the TAPS, the 2 weeks TAPS. Well, I was the marksmanship instructor,
Yeah.
so I didn't even go through that. My buddies that did, they're like, yeah, they taught us how to write a resume and taught us how to interview for a job, and that's about it. That's about all we got out of it.
Yeah.
And there was no, hey, reach out to these local groups in your area that can fill that void of the military.
Yeah.
Once you get out.
Right.
And even with our first event, I'd been in the nonprofit world for 4 years, and we had 12 nonprofits show up, and I knew three of them. And
Wow.
so there was nine literally in my backyard that I was like, I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
You know, you,
Yeah.
you hear about the big national ones, the Legions and the VFWs and the Tunnels for Towers, and those the big ones like that. You hear about those. You
Hmm.
don't hear about the combat warriors out of Kearney, Nebraska that take people hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
You don't hear about the CVMA. You don't really hear about them, and they're a national club.
Yeah.
That ride motorcycles and they do great things in the community. And so for me with Herostock, a lot of what we really focus on is actually spreading the word of these nonprofits
That's
and
awesome.
saying, look around. There's, last year we had 44. We had 44 vendors there. And I said, look, all this is available. You there's if you can't find something you don't want to do, start one. We'll
I
help
love
you.
it. I love it. But there are so many veteran nonprofits in the US alone. And one of the things that was interesting or intriguing to me is how many nonprofits aren't just for veterans, but also extend to active duty. And
Yep.
active duty has no idea.
Yep.
One issue that we're facing in my community is that when it comes to mental health specifically, lack of providers or lack of active duty providers, and finding that there are nonprofits locally that can help active duty, they just don't
Definitely.
know it. I mean, how much of this information is out there that exists and people just don't know? So super grateful that you are helping get out the word about these nonprofits that really need it. Because I mean, the smaller nonprofits that, I hate to use the word competing, but in the nonprofit world, I guess it is competing with other nonprofits, should be collaborating, and for some people it
Sure.
is, but you know
Yep.
it's it's trying to figure out how to get the word out about your organization that is doing a lot of good for people, but also simultaneously raising all the money and doing all the things. I didn't want to start a nonprofit because there's so much work that goes into nonprofits, but I've had
There
multiple
is.
ideas for one. um but yeah, it really is a lot. So kudos to what you're doing and just helping these organizations get the word out there. The other thing that I wanted to talk a little bit more about is you talked about the struggle with you not serving during that 9/11 or the post 9/11 era, when all your buddies are going out to war and you're at home really focusing on what you needed to focus on at that time, which was your family and your business.
Yep.
How did you essentially cope with the feelings that were coming up for you during that time?
I spent a lot of time at work. I just would use the grind method and just grind through stuff. I never really talked about it. I never talked to anybody about it. It was an internal struggle that I dealt with. Was it healthy? No, it really wasn't to keep it all inside. But it was the way that I chose to do it. Looking back, I probably could have been a better dad back then because of the internal struggles that I was facing and dealing with on my own. But it was just kind of how I decided to do it. I'm the Marine. I don't need to talk to anybody, and
Yeah.
I'll take care of it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I did. But and it's still a struggle today, even when you're talking to people and they're talking about where they were and what they did, and you get in those conversations and they look at you and, well, served 4 years peacetime and didn't really have to see anything. And I always say that I'm the lucky one. I'm one of the lucky ones that didn't have to go over and play in the sandbox and deal with getting shot at and rocketed and mortared and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
and part of what I do is part of the guilt to what I didn't do.
Mm.
Um, I had this question posed a while back. One of the guys locally, he's part of the Marine Corps League and super good dude, David Ocean. And he asked me when I was talking to him one night. He goes, "Why do you do what you do?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Why do you put so much time into the Nebraska Warriors?" And I said, "Well, I love it. I love hockey. I love, being with the veterans and, hanging out with my brothers and sisters." He goes, "No, why do you really do what you do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What are you asking me?" Like, I couldn't figure out where he was going with it. And he goes, "I'm going to tell you right now." He goes, "I stood in a room with four of the most highly decorated military personnel to ever live. Like, they had medals just dripping off their chest. And every single one of them said the same thing, that they felt guilt
Mm-hmm.
that they could have done more, or they should have done this, or." And he goes, "Do you think that plays a little bit of a part into why you do what you do?" 100%. When you put it like that, yeah, it is. There's the guilt factor of, I should have went over. I should have rejoined and went back in, and in my head I can think that, but at the same time I look at it and go, I would have been front lines. I was a combat MOS. I was in the Marine Corps. We would have been in the front. And had I made it, not made it back home, Herostock might not have been born,
Yeah.
or Nebraska Warriors might not have been born. So there's a lot of push and pull with that. Of, yes, there's the regret that I didn't go back in and I didn't go see war, but at the same time, there's a lot of me that's grateful that I didn't have to.
Do you find that Herostock is a bit healing for you, and that survivor's guilt or any guilt that you may be feeling over the past few years that you've had to deal with these emotions?
Yep, 100%. That's and I don't get to enjoy the events. Like last year, I didn't really get to enjoy the event. We were confined to 20,000 square foot, and I put 16 miles on my shoes. I
Mm.
met, I think, every single person that came to that event. I shook their hand. So it's a very, very busy day. But as I go back and I look through the pictures and I watch the videos that people shot, and I see the high fives and the laughs and the hugs and and I'm getting texts from buddies that are like, "Man, that was so amazing. I didn't want it to end."
Mm.
And that right there kind of fills my cup that says, "Hey, this is needed, and I'm doing more now than I could have done back then."
Mm. That's
Um,
awesome.
so it really, yeah, it one of my biggest ones last year. I've got a buddy that he's Army EOD, severe PTSD, anxiety, does not do crowds, very, very alert all the time. And he texted me that morning. He goes, "Hey man, I'm going to come out. I'm probably only going to stay for 5 minutes because I just can't do crowds." We had 1,000 people show up,
Mhm.
so it was a pretty good crowd inside and out, and he ended up staying 5.5 hours.
Wow.
And he texted me the next morning. He goes, "Brother, thank you for doing what you do. I have never felt more comfortable in a room full of killers than I did that day." And I was like, nailed it. That was my win. So
That's incredible. I
yeah.
think the overarching kind of theme here that comes to mind that I really want the listeners to think about is one of the things that I think about whenever I have guests on the podcast is, what do different people use for healing, whether it be a conventional way or maybe an unconventional way. And I think what's unique about your unconventional way of healing is that it goes back to service of other people that need it the most. And so, I think when people are racking their brains about, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I'm dealing with all these feelings, and maybe therapy isn't comfortable right now, or, maybe joining the veteran group isn't comfortable right now, or, going on a hike or being around people, maybe thinking of, what can I do to give back? And for me, it's the podcast. Like, a lot of it is in the podcast of, it's the one thing that's bigger than me, that it takes effort, but I
Yep.
can continually do it every single week and put out an episode. And I know that in that I'm giving back. For you, it's Herostock. And so, it's not always something where, like, you necessarily get to enjoy it in that moment, or get to, make a lot of money off of it, or, name, tangible thing here, but it's the fact that doing that thing, serving, doing something bigger than yourself, is healing in itself. And so I want the listeners especially to think of that. Like if you are someone that's listening and really struggling with what do I do to get past this rut or this thing that is eating me up inside, maybe I'm not saying don't go to therapy, but therapy for people aren't, therapy for isn't always the best thing for people in that moment. I'll say that.
Right.
And maybe
Yep.
that's not like, maybe that's the more taboo thing to say. I don't know. But like, even for me, the thought of therapy, a lot of times, like I haven't had a lot of good therapy experiences. And so, the thought of therapy is like more nerve wracking, or the thought of going and finding the right therapist is more nerve wracking than just doing something that makes me feel good, which is giving back to other people. And so I don't know if you feel the same way or what your thoughts are on that.
Definitely. And with therapy, there's a lot of people that don't want to sit in a clinical setting around in a group and talk about their feelings because we're military. We don't talk about feelings. We don't have feelings, right? We go in and we do our job, we do our thing. There's no emotion, there's no feelings. They don't want to let out the feelings in a group setting like that. A lot of times they're going to be more reserved. They won't talk about what they really need to talk about. And even with a one-on-one, if you're talking to somebody that's never seen it, never felt war, never smelled war, they don't understand.
Right.
I even have a lot of guys with the Nebraska Warriors when I was with them. Like they would talk to me, but they wouldn't like talk to me.
Yeah.
And I was good friends with a lot of these people, and but you catch them in a locker room and they're sitting next to a guy, and next thing you know, they're carrying on a conversation about serving in this part of Iraq, and oh, I was there at this time. Yeah, man, I got there right after you, or and they had a chance to kind of talk about that experience over there, and talking's healing. Being able to talk about something, it's one way of healing, but you have to have it in the right setting to where they'll really open up and talk about it. Because a lot of these
Right.
guys and gals, they don't want to talk about it to Joe Blow or
Right.
Mr. and Mrs. Civilian. They don't want to talk about it.
Right.
I've even talked to some of the guys that's written books, and they're like, I wrote this book for my kids
Mm.
so that I could explain to them through the book why I was the way I was when I came back.
Right.
I can't explain it to them, but through this book, they can read about it and understand, why I was the way I was. And they don't want to talk about what they saw over there
Right.
to their kids or their wife or, their mom and dad that never saw it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just think it goes to show at the end of the day that there are multiple forms of therapy to be explored other
definitely.
than just your traditional talk. And so maybe the answer to this mental health provider crisis isn't just staffing more psychiatrists and psychotherapists. Maybe it's just exploring other methodologies, art therapy, music therapy, outdoor
Hunting and
therapy.
fishing,
Yeah.
riding motorcycles, getting wind on your face. I mean, rucking. There's a lot of guys that like to ruck. Me, not so much, but there's a lot of guys that like to ruck,
Yeah.
and they get enjoyment out of it, and that's what they want to do.
Right.
There's something for everyone out there. You just have to find it.
Right. And
Uh,
maybe taking the word therapy out of it, because therapy does sound very clinical, at least to me, sounds
sure.
very clinical,
Yep.
just enjoying something that you love or trying something new.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that's, I love the outdoors. So anytime I get to hunt or fish, I go hunt and fish. And we actually went up to, I took one of my board members with me and his son, and then my daughter. We all went up to Lake Michigan and we fished with Gunny up there at the Primal Outfitters. And we didn't catch a lot of fish, but we were out on the water and having a good time. It was the escape, the getaway. And that's what it was more than anything, and he runs a great outfit up there, and he's like, come back anytime. I got to hunt with a band of heroes. They drew my name for a hunt here in Nebraska, ironically enough. They hunt all over the United States and drew my name for my own state.
Wow.
But I got to do a 4-day hunt with them, and got to meet guys from Pennsylvania and make those connections with those guys. And that's 99% of what we're trying to do is make connections.
Right.
And with what we're doing right now, we've made so many connections throughout the United States that if we hear of somebody that's having issues down in Florida, I can call up that nonprofit down there and go, hey, man, there's a guy down there that's in trouble.
That's awesome.
Or, up in Pennsylvania, hey, guys, we got a female military up there that's in problem, is having problems.
Right.
And be able to connect people through, what we're doing basically and making the connections that we're making. So
that's incredible. I have some people that are coming to mind that I need to connect you with.
Perfect.
We'll have to chat more after this episode, but let's talk a little bit more about Herostock. So what do you have specific genres of bands that come out? Is it just bands? Is it an event with food bands? I mean, let's say that I were to go to a Herostock event, what can I expect?
So this year we have grown very fast. We've decided to take it out of the state of Nebraska. Our kickoff is June 29th down in Rolla, Missouri. We worked with the Chamber of Commerce down there. They are amazing. They're helping out a ton. We have the fairgrounds down there that got donated to us to run the event. We have 3 country singers and a rock singer coming in for that one, all of them veterans. We've also may actually have a rock band coming out of Fort Leonard Wood, which is about 30 minutes away from Rolla, Missouri. So they're all active duty still. But we'll have they're talking about bringing in Cobras for a static display, some military gear for display. The fire trucks are coming in, hanging an American flag off the ladders. There's going to be a car show down there. We've got, I think, 4 food trucks down there set up right now. There will be alcohol served on site. We've got bounce houses for the kids. We're going to have a rock wall for the kids to climb. It's really kind of a family event is what we really want to gear it towards, because we want to heal from within the family. One thing that I really noticed when I went on that trip with the hunting group, I came home, I was excited. I was like, man, I got to go to this hunt. It was so much fun, blah, 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 blah. And my family's like, cool, we stayed here and worked and went to school.
Life didn't change for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had this amazing 4 days away and did what I really loved to do, and then come home and it was like, well, they didn't get to experience any of it.
Right.
So we want to try to include the family piece into it. Really make it a family friendly event. Rolla is going to be a fun one. We're hoping between 4,000 and 7,000 show up for this year's down there. Yeah, so it grew really, really fast. And venues are going to kind of change some of our layout of what we can do. Last year we had a smaller venue. We didn't have room for bounce houses, so there wasn't a lot of stuff for kids to do. Nashville's going to be indoor, so it's going to change our food trucks and that kind of stuff. We'll have to have people actually come in and set up catering type stuff for it. And then Ashland, we have 135 acres of ground that we can use. Wow. That was donated to us to do the event. And, we're going to have camping on site. We've got 9 bands those 2 nights. The first night's going to be rock. The second night's going to be country. We're bringing in the American Hitmen from Utah, which they just finished a European tour. Scotty Hastings is going to be headlining the country night. He just signed with Black River Entertainment. He's actually on billboards all over Nashville right now with his new EP that he just dropped, I'm America. So we're going to have a lot of stuff going on, and Ashland's going to have bounce houses and pony rides, and we've got all kinds of stuff laid out for that one too. So
wow,
it's a very family friendly event, and it's fun. It's fun for the whole family. The kids can have stuff to enjoy while they're there. There's music that's going to be playing, and it can be background music for people while they're doing stuff, or they can be right in the mix of it in the mosh pit and, jamming to whoever's playing. So, we focus very heavily on veteran or first responder singers or bands, but we have reached out to some of the bigger talent. I actually talked to Jelly Roll's manager, and Jelly Roll is very interested in what we're doing.
Wow.
Yeah, we've reached out to, Bad Wolves and some bigger bands and stuff too to come in that are big veteran supporting bands.
Yeah.
Or first responder supporters. Because my thought is I want to try to grow these veteran and first responder singers that have given 4 years of their life or 25 years of their life, to this country. And now they're just starting their musical career.
Right.
And be able to put them in front of 40,000 people.
Right.
That's my goal, is to put them in front of 40,000 people and have them have that moment where they can say, I've done this.
That's so awesome. Yeah, because I mean, I'm not a musical artist. I mean, I've done music in my life, but I'm not a musical artist trying to make that my career. And I mean, even just in the podcasting world, you have to stick at some of these things for a really long time, typically, to even get on those large stages. So to even give someone the opportunity to say, here, get in front of 4,000 people,
Yep.
that's absolutely incredible. Are the events that you do, are they limited to just veterans, families, first responders, or is anyone in the public welcome to attend them?
So last year it was strictly heroes. That was all that
Okay.
we let in. It was still 100% free. This year we've opened it up to the general public. So we have decided to charge $10 for a ticket for general public. Veteran, first responders, Gold Star families get a ticket for free so they can come in and enjoy the event for free. The only thing that they'll have to pay for is food and alcohol.
Mm.
But outside of that, we want them to be there to be able to honor them and, really show the support, and we look back at like the Vietnam veterans. They came home and got spit on and they got called baby killers and, whatever else. We want our first responders, veterans, military, Gold Star families. We want them to understand that there is a place for them and they have a safe space that they can be in with us.
That's awesome.
And then we open it up to the general public because we want them to come in and go, these are all the people that, keep us safe, whether it's
Yeah.
daily or during their tours. And then also to be able to see the nonprofits and go, wow, there's this many nonprofits in our area that's doing amazing things, and they get a chance to talk to them and interact with them and hopefully become a sponsor of one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Donate some money because 99% of the nonprofits that are moms and pops, nobody gets paid. It's all volunteer time. And my whole board, I've got 8 people on my board, and we're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid a dime to do this. And, our events run anywhere from 15 to 25 or $30,000 to run. And it all comes in off sponsorship. So
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask, obviously it's not free to run these events. Is it a lot of people donating and you mentioned 135 acres of land donated. That's absolutely incredible. But these people that are coming in and they're supporting these events, these artists, are they mostly donating their time, or do you have large sponsorships or people that are donating? And then also, to cap off that question, how can people donate to
sure.
Herostock to support?
So a lot of the guys and gals that come in to play this, they cut their prices. Scotty just signed with a entertainment company down in Nashville, and he's about half of what they usually charge to come in and do our event.
Yeah.
We've got a band that's local out of Omaha. They're coming in for free. They're like, we just want to come in and play. We want to be a part of it. We've got a guy coming out of Alaska that's coming in for a plane ticket. That's all we have
Wow.
to provide is a plane ticket to get him in. So a lot of the stuff, is either free or discounted. There are still some things, security companies, those are a little bit harder to get donated or free, but because they have the overhead and the insurance and
Right.
that kind of stuff that they have to carry too. So, we've had some stuff donated, but a majority of it is run strictly off sponsors. And
Wow.
it's people that hear about what we do and they reach out to us and they say, hey, we want to, we've got a tiered system that we use for sponsorships, and you can go from a diamond clear down to I think a copper is the lowest one that we have. This year we offered corporate sponsorships to try to get some bigger sponsors going in with us, and we're talking to a couple of them right now. Nothing's happened yet, so we're still waiting to see how that goes. But a lot of it is, we'll go out and we'll run events. We threw together a smoke off event. We had 6 professional smokers come in, smoke up ribs and pork butt, and we served a 2 meat plate for $20. And we had 3 bands that we put on stage. So they had live music, and it was at a brewery, so there was alcohol there. And we had 246 plates that we sold that day.
Wow.
So we do a lot of our own fundraising, go to a lot of events and set up booths and sell merch and that kind of stuff, talk about what we do. But right now for the month of May, we're part of a thing called Give Lincoln Local. And it's the Lincoln Community Foundation has set up a fund and there's $760,000 in that fund. And you have to register as a nonprofit to be a part of it. Well, if anybody donates during the month of May, part of we could get a percentage of whatever we get overall for the month of May. We get a percentage of that $760,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a huge deal. We've been pushing it pretty hard on social media and that kind of stuff, but we're still small. We got 4,500 followers. It's not like we have 50,000 people that's watching what we're doing right now and, jump in. So, but yeah, you can go through the website, www.herostock.org, and donate there. If you want to donate by check to the Lincoln Community Foundation, you can do that too. Just make sure you put in Herostock in the memo line. If you want to be a sponsor, reach out to me, jason.herostock@gmail.com. And find us on social media. I run the Facebook. I'm old, so I don't do all the other stuff, but Facebook's up to date. We've got a lot of stuff going on there, so follow us on Facebook. I do a little bit on Instagram, but not much. So,
what's the best way to support Herostock for anyone listening?
There's 3 ways: time, treasure, or talent. Donate your time, give your treasure, or help us out and be one of our talented people that help out the board. So
awesome. Simple enough. Ways. Simple enough. Well, I'll make sure to repost everything on Your Story Doesn't End Here social media, but also in the show notes for anyone who does want to support in any way. All the info will be in the show notes. So at a minimum, I always ask my listeners to at least go like the social media pages and share with the people in your network, because you never know who needs to hear this information, even if you personally don't need the information yourself. I guarantee you there's someone that a friend, family member, that really needs to be impacted by what Herostock is doing. So, Jason, I am so appreciative of you coming on the show and sharing just a little bit about what you're doing. And I hope that people take advantage of supporting and showing up and telling everyone else that they know what you're doing too, because it's so important. It's so needed. And music and alternative therapies or healings are really what are going to change the scope of what we see when it comes to PTSD and all these things that scientists rack their brains about every single year and trying to figure out. But to wrap up this episode today, I just want to ask if there's any last words or a piece of advice that you want to leave the listeners with.
I've got a buddy named Tom Ettinger. He's a good friend of mine, and his saying is contact, care, and listen. Just do those 3. Reach out to a buddy, contact, care, and listen.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today, with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.